Socrates was born in 470 or 469 BC to Sophroniscus and Phanerete, a stoneworker and a midwife, respectively, in the Athenian deme of Alapetsa. Therefore, he was an Athenian citizen, having been born to relatively affluent Athenians. He lived close to his father's relatives and inherited, as was customary, part of his father's estate, securing a life reasonably free of financial concerns. His education followed the laws and customs of Athens. He learned the basic skills of reading and writing and, like most wealthy Athenians, received extra lessons in various other fields such as gymnastics, poetry and music. He was married twice. Which came first is not clear. His marriage to Xanthippe took place when Socrates was in his 50s, and another marriage was with a daughter of Aristides, an Athenian statesman. He had 3 sons with Xanthippe. Socrates fulfilled his military service during the Peloponnesian War and distinguished himself in 3 campaigns, according to Plato. Another incident that reflects Socrates' respect for the law is the arrest of Leon the Salaminian. As Plato describes in his Apology, Socrates and 4 others were summoned to the Tholos and told by representatives of the 30 tyrants, which began ruling in 404 BC, to arrest Leon for execution. Again, Socrates was the sole abstainer, choosing to risk the tyrant's wrath and retribution rather than to participate in what he considered to be a crime. Socrates attracted great interest from the Athenian public and especially the Athenian youth. He was notoriously ugly, having a flat turned-up nose, bulging eyes and a large belly. His friends joked about his appearance. Socrates was indifferent to material pleasures, including his own appearance and personal comfort. He neglected personal hygiene, bathed rarely, walked barefoot, and owned only one ragged coat. He moderated his eating, drinking, and sex, although he did not practice full abstention. Although Socrates was attracted to youth, as was common and accepted in ancient Greece, he resisted his passion for young men because, as Plato describes, he was more interested in educating their souls. Socrates did not seek sex from his disciples, as was often the case between older and younger men in Athens. Politically, he did not take sides in the rivalry between the democrats and the oligarchs in Athens. He criticized both.
Please like, share and subscribe our channel and click on bell icon.
The character of Socrates as exhibited in Apology, Crito, Phaedo and Symposium concurs with other sources to an extent that gives confidence in Plato's depiction of Socrates in these works as being representative of the real Socrates. Socrates died in Athens in 399 BC after a trial for impiety and the corruption of the young that lasted for only a day. He spent his last day in prison among friends and followers who offered him a route to escape, which he refused. He died the next morning, in accordance with his sentence, after drinking poison hemlock. He had never left Athens, except during the military campaigns which he had participated in. And so they grow richer and richer, and the more they think of making a fortune the less they think of virtue. For when riches and virtue are placed together in the scales of the balance, the one always rises as the other falls. The true champion of justice, if he intends to survive even for a short time, must necessarily confine himself to private life and leave politics alone. I desire only to know the truth, and to live as well as I can. And, to the utmost of my power, I exhort all other men to do the same. I exhort you also to take part in the great combat, which is the combat of life, and greater than every other earthly conflict. As for me, all I know is that I know nothing, for when I don't know what justice is, I'll hardly know whether it is a kind of virtue or not, or whether a person who has it is happy or unhappy. Socrates. I soon realized that poets do not compose their poems with knowledge, but by some inborn talent and by inspiration, like seers and prophets who also say many fine things without any understanding of what they say. No one knows whether death may not be the greatest of all blessings for a man, yet men fear it as if they knew it was the greatest of evils. Remember, no human condition is ever permanent. Then you will not be overjoyed in good fortune, nor too sorrowful in misfortune. Mankind is made of 2 kinds of people: wise people who know they're fools, and fools who think they are wise. God would seem to indicate to us and not allow us to doubt that these beautiful poems are not human, or the work of man, but divine and the work of God, and that the poets are only the interpreters of the gods. Socrates. Neither in war nor yet at law ought any man to use every way of escaping death. For often in battle there is no doubt that if a man will throw away his arms, and fall on his knees before his pursuers, he may escape death. And in other dangers there are other ways of escaping death, if a man is willing to say and do anything. The difficulty, my friends, is not in avoiding death, but in avoiding unrighteousness, for that runs faster than death. It is not difficult to avoid death, gentlemen of the jury. It is much more difficult to avoid wickedness, for it runs faster than death. A man who really fights for justice must lead a private, not a public, life if he is to survive for even a short time. I know nothing except the fact of my ignorance. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Socrates. For the fear of death is indeed the pretense of wisdom, and not real wisdom, being a pretense of knowing the unknown. And no one know whether death, which men in their fear apprehend to be the greatest evil, may not be the greatest good. Is not this ignorance of a disgraceful sort, the ignorance which is the conceit that a man knows that he does not know? And in this respect only I believe myself to differ from men in general, and may perhaps claim to be wiser than they are. That whereas I know but little of the world below, I do not suppose that I know. I do nothing but go about persuading you all, old and young alike, not to take thought for your persons or your properties, but and chiefly to care about the greatest improvement of the soul. I tell you that virtue is not given by money, but that from virtue comes money and every other good of man. Socrates. The law presumably says that it is finest to keep as quiet as possible in misfortunes and not be irritated, since the good and bad in such things aren't plain, nor does taking it hard get one anywhere, not are any of the human things worthy of great seriousness. One must accept the fall of the dice and settle one's affairs accordingly, in whatever way argument declares would be best. One must not behave like children who have stumbled and who hold on to the hurt place and spend their time in crying out. Rather one must always habituate the soul to turn as quickly as possible to curing and setting aright what has fallen and is sick, doing away with lament by medicine. How many things can I do without? Wisdom is knowing you know nothing. Nobody is qualified to become a statesman who is entirely ignorant of the problem of wheat. Socrates. Do you feel no compunction, Socrates, at having followed a line of action which puts you in danger of the death penalty? I might fairly reply to him, you are mistaken, my friend, if you think that a man who is worth anything ought to spend his time weighing up the prospects of life and death. He has only one thing to consider in performing any action, that is, whether he is acting rightly or wrongly, like a good man or a bad one. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall gain easily what others have labored hard for. One thing only I know, and that is that I know nothing. By far the greatest and most admirable form of wisdom is that needed to plan and beautify cities and human communities. Wealth does not bring goodness, but goodness brings wealth and every other blessing, both to the individual and to the state. Socrates. And the same things look bent and straight when seen in water and out of it, and also both concave and convex, due to the sights being misled by the colors, and every sort of confusion of this kind is plainly in our soul. And, then, it is because they take advantage of this affection in our nature that shadow painting, and puppeteering, and many other tricks of the kind fall nothing short of wizardry. Programming is not about what you know. It's about what you can figure out. I don't know why I did it, I don't know why I enjoyed it, and I don't know why I'll do it again. The really important thing is not live, but to live well. The answer I gave myself and the oracle was that it was to my advantage to be as I am. True wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us. Socrates. To fear death, gentlemen, is no other than to think oneself wise when one is not, to think one knows what one does not know. Athenian men, I respect and love you, but I shall obey the god rather than you. How can you wonder your travels do you no good, when you carry yourself around with you? The only thing I know for sure is that I know nothing at all. For sure, everything is plainer when spoken than when unspoken. Nasce te ipsum. Each individual can only do one thing well. He can't do lots of things. If he tries, he will be jack of all trades, and master of none. What I do not know, I do not think I know. The great honor in the world is to be what we pretend to be, having the fewest wants. I am nearest to the gods. As for me, all I know is that I know nothing. One thing only I know, and that is that I know nothing. Socrates.
Please like, share and subscribe our channel and click on bell icon.